The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days, and Ngozi's hands were shaking as she counted the last of her coins on the wooden table, 12 naira short of what she owed the market union for her stall space. "Pay by tomorrow morning, or your table goes to someone else," the union collector had said that afternoon, not even looking at her as he wrote her name in his debt book with the other struggling traders. "Everybody want chop for this market. No be only you they suffer." She wrapped the coins in a torn piece of cloth and pressed it against her chest, staring at the small mound of yams she had left, not enough to sell for what she needed by morning. Somewhere behind her, laughter rang out from the group of younger traders who had gathered under the zinc shelter, their voices carrying easily across the narrow market path. "Ngozi don dey sell yam since when? Since her husband died, she never up herself," one of them said, loud enough for her to hear, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Old woman like this, wetin she dey find for market this hour? She suppose dey house dey rest her leg." Ngozi didn't turn around. She had learned, over 11 years of widowhood, that turning around only fed their laughter. She bent low, blew life into the dying coals of her roasting fire, and watched the orange light climb up the sides of the yam pieces, the only warmth she had left in a night that had taken everything else from her. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Ngozi Adaeze had not always smelled of smoke and roasted yam skin. 11 years earlier, she had walked through the gates of Amaka Girls' Grammar School as a young graduate with a certificate in economics tucked under her arm, dreaming of a bank job in Lagos, a small flat with running water, a husband who would call her my wife with pride instead of shame. Life had given her Chibuike instead, a quiet mechanic with gentle hands and a laugh that made the whole compound smile, and for 6 years that had been enough. Then the fever came. It took him in 11 days, from a strong man fixing engines under the mango tree to a still body wrapped in white cloth, and it left Ngozi with a 4-year-old daughter, a mountain of hospital bills, and a family that closed its doors the moment the burial rites were finished. "You are now free," her husband's elder brother, Emeka, had told her at the reading of the family land, his voice as cold as the harmattan wind. "Free to go back to your father's house. This compound is not for widows who bring no more use." She had begged. She remembered the shame of it even now, kneeling in the dust in front of men who avoided her eyes, asking only to remain in the small room at the back of the compound so her daughter would not grow up without a roof. They gave her nothing. Not one plot, not 1 naira from the family business her husband had helped build with his own hands. She left with a metal box of clothes, a photograph of her wedding day, and a little girl clinging to her wrapper. The yam business began as a desperate accident. An old woman named Mama Chidinma, who had once sold beside Ngozi's mother in a different market decades ago, took pity on the young widow and lent her enough money to buy a first batch of tubers and a rusted iron grill. "Nobody go believe say, you go succeed for this business," Mama Chidinma had warned her gently. "But yam no dey ask who your papa be. Yam only ask if you fit roast am well." Ngozi learned to roast yam the way she had once learned economics, with focus and discipline, testing spices, adjusting fire, listening to what her customers wanted before they even said it. Within 2 years, her stall at Eke Ochanja Market had a small but loyal following, mostly poor laborers, students, and night workers who trusted her portions and her honesty. But loyalty from the poor did not stop the wealthy market women from mocking her, did not stop her husband's family from spreading whispers that she had reduced herself to nothing, did not stop her own daughter from coming home in tears sometimes, asking why her classmates called her yam seller's daughter as though it were a curse. Tonight, as she fanned the coals and tried not to hear the laughter behind her, 12-year-old Adaeze sat on an upturned bucket nearby, doing her homework by the light of a small kerosene lantern. her school uniform patched at the elbow but clean, her eyes fierce with a determination that made Ngozi's chest ache with love and fear in equal measure. "Mama, when I finish school, I will buy you a big house," Adaeze said suddenly, not looking up from her exercise book. "A house with tiles on the floor, and a gate that nobody can climb over." Ngozi smiled, though her eyes stung. "First finish your assignment, my dear." The house go come. A shadow fell across the roasting fire. Ngozi looked up to see a tall man in an expensive black kaftan standing at the edge of her stall, flanked by two other men who carried themselves like bodyguards, their eyes scanning the market with quiet suspicion. The stranger's face was partly hidden beneath the brim of a soft cap, but something about the way he stood, still, watchful, as though memorizing every detail of the scene, made the hair rise on the back of Ngozi's neck. "Good evening," the man said, his voice deep and unfamiliar, carrying none of the pidgin cadence of the market. "I was told the best roasted yam in this city could be found here. Is that true?" The younger traders under the shelter had gone quiet, watching. Ngozi wiped her hands on her wrapper, suddenly self-conscious of the smoke stains on her blouse, the cracked skin on her palms. "You fit try and judge for yourself, sir," she said carefully. "I no go lie to you and say na the best. Only God fit say who is the best." Something flickered across the stranger's face, an expression she couldn't name, somewhere between recognition and disbelief. He crouched slowly at her stall, studying her yams, and then studied her, his eyes lingering a fraction too long on the faded photograph tucked into the corner of her wooden table, the wedding photograph she kept there for luck. "May I ask," he said quietly, "what is your name?" "Ngozi," she answered, wary now. "Ngozi Adaeze." The man went very still. Behind him, one of his companions shifted uneasily, glancing at his employer as though waiting for an instruction that hadn't come. "Adaeze," the stranger repeated softly, almost to himself, and for a moment his composed face cracked with something that looked dangerously close to grief. "That was my mother's name too." Before Ngozi could respond, he straightened abruptly, as if catching himself saying too much, and reached into his kaftan, producing a wallet thick with crisp naira notes. "I will take all the yam on your grill," he said, his voice controlled again, businesslike. "And I would like to speak with you tomorrow, properly, somewhere quiet." The other traders under the shelter were staring now, their earlier laughter forgotten, replaced by naked curiosity and, in some faces, the beginning of alarm. "Sir, I no understand," Ngozi said slowly, her heart pounding for reasons she could not explain. "Wetin you want with me?" The stranger paused, looking down at her with an intensity that made her want to step back. "There is something about your face," he said, "that I have been searching for a very long time." He placed a folded card on her table, more money than she had seen in a single transaction in months, and walked away into the darkness of the market without another word, his bodyguards trailing behind him, leaving Ngozi standing frozen beside her fire, Adaeze's homework forgotten, the whispers of the market traders rising around her like smoke. She looked down at the card in her trembling hand. A name and an address were printed on it in gold lettering. A name she recognized instantly. A name that had been on every newspaper headline and business magazine cover in the country for the past decade. Her breath caught in her throat. It could not be. Sleep did not come easily that night. Ngozi lay on her thin mattress, listening to Adaeze's soft breathing beside her, turning the gold-lettered card over and over in her fingers until the edges softened from the sweat of her palms. The name on the card belonged to Chief Obiora Kalu Namdi, the reclusive billionaire who had built one of the largest oil and logistics empires in West Africa. A man so private that few people had ever seen his face outside of carefully staged photographs. Why would a man like that stand at her yam stall? Why would her face remind him of anything at all? By the time the sun rose over the tin roofs of the market, Word had already begun to spread that big man had visited Ngozi's stall the night before, and the same traders who had mocked her for years now watched her with narrowed, calculating eyes, whispering questions she could not yet answer herself. She dressed Adaeze for school with hands that would not stop trembling, kissed her daughter's forehead, and made a decision that would change everything she thought she knew about her own life. She was going to that address. If you're still watching up to now, type "I'm still here" in the comment section. The compound at the address on the card was unlike anything Ngozi had ever seen in person, only in the glossy pages of magazines discarded by wealthier customers. Iron gates twice her height slid open at the mention of her name, revealing a compound of manicured lawns, marble fountains, and a house that seemed to swallow the sky. A uniformed steward led her through corridors lined with oil paintings, her bare sandals silent against cold, polished floors, her heart hammering against her ribs with every step. Chief Obiora was waiting for her in a study filled with books and framed photographs, standing by the window with his back to her, and when he turned, the composed businessman from the market was gone, replaced by a man whose eyes were red-rimmed as though he had not slept. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice unsteady. "Please, sit." Ngozi lowered herself carefully into a leather chair, gripping her wrapper in both hands. "Chief, I know why you sent for me. I be only yam seller. If I do anything wrong—" "You have done nothing wrong," he interrupted gently. He crossed the room and picked up a framed photograph from his desk, staring at it for a long moment before handing it to her. 28 years ago, I had a sister. My father sent her away when she refused an arranged marriage, disowned her completely, erased her from every family record. I was 12 years old. I never saw her again. My father told us she had died in a car accident in another state, and for 28 years, I believed him. Ngozi looked down at the photograph in her hands, and the blood drained from her face. The young woman in the faded picture, smiling shyly beside a much younger version of the man now standing before her, bore a resemblance to Ngozi, so striking it was as though she were looking into a warped mirror of her own mother, a woman who had died when Ngozi was only 9 years old, a woman whose own history had always been shrouded in silence and unanswered questions. "That is not possible," Ngozi whispered, her voice barely audible. "My mother's name was Chiamaka. She was from Nkwere. She never spoke about any family beyond her own village." "Chiamaka was the name she used to hide," Chief Obiora said quietly, sitting down across from her, his hands trembling as much as hers. "Her real name, the name my father tried to erase from every record in this country, was Adaeze Namdi, my sister, your mother." If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe because we bring you powerful stories like this every week. The silence in the study stretched unbearably as Ngozi tried to make sense of the words that had just shattered everything she believed about her own history. Her mother, the quiet, hard-working woman who had raised her in a 2-room flat in Owerri, who had never once mentioned wealth, family land, or any name beyond Chiamaka, had been born into one of the wealthiest families in the country and had chosen, or been forced, to disappear into obscurity rather than live under her father's control. "If this is true," Ngozi said slowly, forcing the words out, "why did nobody come looking for us? Why did nobody search for her, for me, in all these years?" Chief Obiora's jaw tightened, old pain resurfacing in his eyes. "My father made sure of that. He controlled everything, the family businesses, the records, even the loyalty of the people who might have helped her. When he died 8 years ago, I inherited everything, but I also inherited his silence, until 3 months ago, when I found letters my sister had written to him, begging for forgiveness, begging to be allowed to see her family again. He never sent a single reply. He kept them locked away like they meant nothing. He reached into a drawer and produced a bundle of yellowed envelopes, the handwriting on them unmistakably familiar to Ngozi, the same careful, looping script that used to write her school permission slips and grocery lists. I have spent 3 months searching for any trace of her, of you, Chief Obiora continued, his voice cracking. I hired investigators. I traced old hospital records, old church registries, until a name appeared, Ngozi Adaeze, running a small food stall in Eke, Ochanja Market. When I saw you last night, standing there in the firelight, I saw my sister's face exactly as I remembered it. I could not breathe. Ngozi's hands shook so violently that the photograph nearly slipped from her fingers. This means say I get family, she whispered, the pigeon slipping back into her voice as her composure cracked. All these years, when them they mock me for market, when my husband people send me comot for house, I get another family where never even sabi say I dey exist. Yes, Chief Obiora said, and I intend to correct 28 years of my father's cruelty, starting now. You are the last surviving heir of my sister. Legally, morally, you belong to this family and everything that comes with it. But even as relief and grief warred violently in her chest, a small, cautious part of Ngozi's mind, the same part that had survived 11 years of being underestimated, refused to fully surrender to the fairy tale unfolding before her. Chief, no vex for the question, she said carefully. But why now? Why you no just quietly send money, come meet me for market, if na help you want give? Why you carry all this, the papers, the letters, come meet me one time like this? For the first time since she had entered the room, something like fear crossed Chief Obiora's face, and his eyes darted, almost imperceptibly, toward the closed door of the study. Because, he said, lowering his voice to barely a whisper, there are people in this family who do not want you found. People who have profited for years from believing there were no other heirs, and now that I have found you, your life may be in more danger than you understand. Before Ngozi could respond, the study door burst open, and a sharply dressed woman in her 40s stormed in, her eyes blazing with fury the moment she saw Ngozi seated in the leather chair. Obiora, what is the meaning of this? The woman demanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. You brought a common yam seller into this house, and you are telling her family secrets. Have you lost your mind? Chief Obiora rose slowly, his expression hardening into something cold and unfamiliar. Adaobi, this is not the time. It is exactly the time, the woman, Adaobi snapped, turning her furious gaze on Ngozi. Do you even know who this woman is, brother? Do you know what she will do to this family, to your children's inheritance, if the world learns there is a hidden heir? Ngozi's stomach dropped. She looked between the two siblings, the fear in Chief Obiora's eyes suddenly making terrible sense, and understood, with a chill that ran straight through her bones, that she had just walked into something far more dangerous than a joyful family reunion. She had walked into a war she didn't even know existed, and the prize was a fortune that powerful people were prepared to protect at any cost. Adaobi's eyes swept over Ngozi with open contempt, taking in her simple blouse, her calloused hands, the faint smell of smoke that clung to her clothes even after a bath that morning. This is the great heir you found, she said with a sharp, humorless laugh. A yam seller from the market. Obiora, our father spent his whole life protecting this family's name, and you want to hand it to a woman who cannot even afford proper shoes. Adaobi, Chief Obiora warned, his voice low and dangerous. Watch how you speak in my house. Your house, Adaobi repeated bitterly. Everything in this house exists because our father built it with sacrifice, and you want to divide it with a stranger simply because she has our sister's face. Faces can be bought, Obiora. DNA tests can be manipulated by people desperate for money. Has that thought even crossed your mind, or has grief blinded you completely? Ngozi rose slowly to her feet, her spine straightening despite the tremor still running through her hands. 11 years of market insults had taught her one thing above all else: silence in the face of cruelty only invited more of it. "Ma, I no come here to fight anybody inheritance," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I no even know say I get any family until this morning. If you want, make them do the DNA test. Way you talk, I go gladly do am. I no come here for money. I come because a man we resemble my mother. Tell me say I get uncle, and as a woman, we lost everything. We get nobody. I just want know if not true." Something in her tone made Adaobi pause, her fury flickering for just a moment before hardening again. "Pretty words," she said coldly. "We shall see how pretty they remain when the lawyers get involved." She turned sharply and stormed out, but not before shooting one final glance at Ngozi, a look that carried not just anger, but something closer to fear. Chief Obiora exhaled slowly once the door closed, rubbing his temples. "I apologize for my sister. She has always feared losing what she believes is rightfully hers, even before you existed." "Chief," Ngozi said carefully, "she just talk say people fit die for this kind matter. Na so this thing serious reach." His silence was answer enough. That evening, Ngozi returned to the market with a heart full of questions she could not voice to anyone, not even Mama Chidinma, who noticed immediately that something had shifted in her young friend's demeanor. She resumed her roasting fire out of habit more than necessity, watching the familiar chaos of the market with new eyes, wondering how many of the faces around her might already know more about her mother's hidden past than she did. Adaeze ran to her after school, breathless with excitement, clutching a folded piece of paper. "Mama, I came first in my class test today," she announced proudly, and for a moment, watching her daughter's radiant smile, Ngozi allowed herself to forget the danger lurking behind Chief Obiora's warning, allowed herself simply to be a proud mother in a noisy market, safe and ordinary. The moment shattered when a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up slowly at the edge of the market path, idling for several long seconds before driving away without anyone stepping out. Ngozi's blood ran cold. She recognized the vehicle. She had seen it parked outside Chief Obiora's compound that very morning. Someone was watching her. 3 days passed in an uneasy blur. Chief Obiora called repeatedly, insisting she move into a safer part of the city while the DNA results were processed, but Ngozi refused, unwilling to uproot Adaeze's schooling or abandon the only livelihood she had painstakingly built with her own hands. On the 4th night, as she banked her roasting fire and prepared to close her stall, a young man approached her, nervous and sweating, despite the cool evening air. "Madame Ngozi," he said quietly, glancing over his shoulder as though checking for watchers, "I work for Madame Adaobi as her driver. I need to tell you something, but if anyone finds out I spoke to you, I will lose more than my job." Ngozi's heart pounded. "Talk," she said simply. "The DNA test result," the young man whispered. "It already come back. 2 days ago. Madame Adaobi and one lawyer, they changed the report before Chief Obiora fit see the original one. The true results confirm, say you be real family, but the one we dem go show Chief tomorrow, go say the test no match." Ngozi's breath caught in her throat. Why? Why they go lie like that? The driver hesitated, glancing nervously toward the market entrance. "Because if the will we their papa leave behind ever come out, the true one, not the one Madame Adaobi and her lawyer don't rewrite, you know be small heir. Madame, you be the only heir. Everything, the oil company, the properties, all of it, is supposed belong to you and your daughter alone." The market noise around her seemed to fade into a distant hum as the full weight of the driver's words settled over Ngozi like a collapsing wall. "Everything," she repeated numbly. "Everything," he confirmed, already backing away into the darkness. "And that na why, madame, you need to fear well, because people will go lose empire like that. Them know they folder quietly. Them they fight." He disappeared into the crowd before Ngozi could ask another question, leaving her standing frozen beside her dying fire, the true scale of what she had stumbled into finally, terrifyingly clear. Somewhere in that gleaming compound, a forged document was waiting to be presented as truth, a lie designed to erase her from a fortune that was rightfully hers, and the people willing to tell that lie had already proven they were willing to do far worse to protect it. For the first time since Chief Obiora had appeared at her stall, Ngozi understood that survival in the market, the hunger, the mockery, the endless labor over open flame had been preparing her for something far greater than she ever imagined. She had spent 11 years learning how to fight for her daughter's life with nothing but her bare hands and unbroken will. Tomorrow, she would need every bit of that strength, because tomorrow the lie would be presented as truth, and only she would know the difference. The question echoing through her mind as she walked home through the darkened streets, Adaeze's small hand tucked trustingly in hers, was no longer whether she would survive what was coming. It was whether she would be believed before it was too late. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you learned from today's story.